Welcome on into GoldSheet TV Week 6 over and under reaction hot take edition. Newbie, we are a quarter of the way through the NFL season. It was a pretty interesting Week 5. Not a lot of just like a couple of games where it felt like there were like sharp action on some sides and that did not pan out. There were other games where you had like the Bengals come back and finally look like a good football team. But Newbie, let's do a little quick recap of Week 5 before we head on to some takes for Week 6. How'd your Week 5 treat you, Newbie?
Man, I'll tell you what, this pros versus Joes that keeps going on week after week. The Joes definitely have been laughing all the way to the counter, that's for sure. You hear that these sports books, I'm not going to be shedding any tears for them or anything like that. They have their worst week of the year in Week 5. And it was a week that I loved the board. Ended up on the wrong side of a bunch of games, simply just because the eye test maybe not doing what the eye test really should have. I had Denver. That team can't get out of their own way. That fumble cost me Denver on the money line, landed on the spread. Minnesota, the ref show that continues to follow the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe get the best of them, but regardless, injury to Justin Jefferson. That's a loser on the show here. Loved Arizona and the case that we made for them against Cincinnati. And then Joe Burrow just decides to be completely back. Jamar Chase, uncoverable. So that defense of Arizona that was showing some promise, all the cracks are showing, but we absolutely nailed how we were looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars game. The rust versus rest was certainly there, and seeing Buffalo struggle out of the gate, even with Jacksonville having really ugly turnovers and being able to get the job done, staying out there in London, that was great to get an outright winner for us to start the weekend. And then last but not least for me, the play that I absolutely loved, one of my favorites, was Pittsburgh getting the points against Baltimore. And this Pittsburgh team, one that I'm going to talk about here in a few, they don't even have somewhat of an offense, and all they do is keep winning games. So we'll talk about Pittsburgh here in a little bit, but I know you and I both had some egg on our face because Dallas, they weren't even in the same stratosphere as the 49ers. So us and the sharp bettors, we weren't even close on that one.
Yeah, the worst part about that whole game too, and like maybe from like a market perspective, like sitting there, like seeing the fact that they're willing to hang that 3.5 basically all week long, probably should have been an indication that they're willing to accept the Dallas Cowboy money because it's over that key number of 3.5. And the Cowboys in the beginning of the football game had a chance to make it a football game, and they punt twice and fumble. So once you do that against the 49ers and give them chances to score unanswered, you just have no shot. I'll gladly talk about Mike Tomlin and whatever the hell he's doing down there in Pittsburgh because that team is so bad. But what he can do from a motivational factor is just out of this world. And it's a couple of games this week. And this is why betting on the NFL is not, one, for the faint of heart, and two, it is one of the most efficient markets. Like if all pro sports, I think it's like the Premier League, then it's the NFL. And it's because there are so many variables that you cannot control as a bettor. The players can't control on the football field themselves. When you have all the refs, the injuries, the weather, and all these things that are part of the game. And when it comes to breaking down statistics for the NFL too, it's like you're dealing with such small sample sizes on everything that you almost have to just predict regression, which is obviously a tough thing to do, which is, of course, the name of betting on sports. So betting on the NFL, everybody loves to do it, but just always be careful out there because there are some games that are just going to be hard to win. Like I would say you were on the right side with you on Minnesota, but I ended up taking KC when that line got to 3, and that was a winner there. I would argue that I was on the right side with Baltimore laying the 4. That's a winner for you in an outright W for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So waiting for a week where the good, the bad, and the ugly kind of all come together, and those are all tickets that I had that come in cash. But we're talking ugly right now, newbie, and there's something very ugly to discuss, and that is the New England Patriots. They are the talk of the town for not the reasons we were used to in the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era. It's been a couple of years now since this marriage has been over. The results have been far from good for the Patriots. Now, Mac Jones, benched for the second straight time. Belichick says he's not doing anything. The offense can't move if you paid them to. Bill Belichick is the center of these discussions now, newbie. There's takes saying fire his ass right now. There are takes saying, hold on, it's the GOAT. You have to give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt, even though we've been doing it for 3 years now. Where do you sit on that debate spectrum, newbie?
I mean, it's the old chicken and the egg, right? But it's the Brady or the Belichick. Which one was the mastermind? And the only chance that we had to point at anything was the season where Tom Brady gets hurt, and they still end up being a competitive team. But since Tom Brady has left, hasn't really been all roses for Mr. Belichick. Losing record without Brady, and sure, he still might be a decent coach, but the problem is Belichick the GM? He doesn't have Brady to boon this roster anymore. And for how many years were you talking about, trying to remember the names that Tom Brady was throwing to? The difference is Mac Jones couldn't hold Tom Brady's jock. I mean, this guy, the fact that just because they ended up making the playoffs the first year when he's there, and a lot of that had to do with a decent record and schedule that they had, but it really hasn't been all roses since that happened. You have a team that is just absolutely devoid of talent. So while maybe I wouldn't be firing Belichick, the coach, something that's been long overdue is having him actually bring a GM in to bounce ideas off of. The idea of Bill Belichick being judge, jury, and executioner for this team is why you're seeing what's happening. You can talk about Mac Jones's lack of play. You can talk about this, that, and the other thing. They bring in Bill O'Brien. The offense still can't move the ball. Everyone was blaming what they were doing on the offensive side of the ball before he came in. What it comes down to me is last night I was watching that Raiders game, and they play the Raiders this week for what it's worth. But last night I was watching that Raiders game, and who but Jacoby Myers making a lot of big plays with a banged up Devontae Adams. And the amount that Jacoby Myers is making this year, auspiciously, is the same amount that they're paying Juju Smith-Schuster. You brought in a proven suboptimal wide receiver for the exact same price tag. You could have had a homegrown talent that continues to put strong seasons together, at least decent wide receiver 2 seasons together. The fact that Bill Belichick is allowed to manage this roster is why you're at where you're at. If they don't change that, you're going to have these same results. And I don't know if Kraft has the stomach quite to fire Bill Belichick. So that's the way that I'm looking at it. I think it has more to do with the players that Bill Belichick has brought in more than actually what you do on a day-to-day, game-to-game basis.
So I think you made some amazing points there, right? Like the amount of picks that the Patriots have missed on in the first round of the draft over the last couple of years is ridiculous. Now, don't get me wrong, though. The draft is a luck-driven process. So, of course, there is some of that factor to consider there because you can make your evaluations, whatever happens. But just even the last couple of years, Isaiah Wynn, a tackle, no longer on the team, performing elsewhere. Sony Michel, not sure he's even in the league anymore. And N'Keal Harry, out of the league, had a forfeited a pick. Mac Jones, who's looking like he's hitting the bench. Cole Strange, who has not been able to put together. And Christian Gonzalez, who's been putting together a decent season, now out for the year. But that's just the first-round picks, and you break down who else they've botched in the second, third, and so on. Draft picks, injuries hasn't helped them either, but they did all this to try to improve their offense with the hiring of Bill O'Brien and trying to add some other weapons, but they got worse somehow. Like this, they have nothing good going for them on the offensive side of the football. They don't block anybody. Mac Jones was lauded as a good decision maker, makes more bad decisions per game than he's made great decisions this entire season so far. And their skilled position players are unathletic. They're not fast, and they struggle to separate. So it's no shock that they suck. This was a bet that I think I didn't make, but I definitely saw in circles, and I regret not making it. Was just taking the Patriots under. I think it was 7.5 or even 8.5 wins heading into this season. Like the defense has played well, but the Patriots' MO over the last 3 years is play great against shitty teams and suck against good teams, and that is the situation now. And then they play a middle of the pack Saints team, which they had a chip on their shoulders to prove. How the hell were the Patriots favorites in this matchup for starters? And boom, just like that, the Saints absolutely devoured the Patriots on Sunday. And it was an embarrassing loss. I think they've scored 18 points in the last 12 quarters of football, the New England Patriots.
Yeah, and it's the story of the year, man. Like it really has been, and it's not like it's in a vacuum this year. Like it's just been this deep descent into what the Patriots are. And it's funny, a lot of Patriots fans that have been in the long haul, they're now saying to all the people who hopped in during the Tom Brady trend, like, welcome to what it was like before Tom Brady was in town, because it was this bad. And how they fix it, I don't know, man. Do you start fresh? Do you move on from Belichick? Do you make him give up GM roles? Do you bring in a new OC, try and do something different? I don't know what the answer is, but all I know is I'm not going to be rushing to back the Patriots anytime soon, even against a Las Vegas Raiders team that I'm not all that excited about either.
Yeah, and that's a matchup that we'll definitely be discussing on Thursday, because when I write in the Gold Sheet this morning and yesterday morning, had a bunch of opinions on how this can go down, because obviously you have the motivational factors for the Belichick disciple McDaniels over there in Las Vegas. You have the absolute just terribleness the Patriots have been putting out there. But the question really now just becomes, right, like the first things first is in the modern NFL, you can't rely on your defense to win you football games.
No.
Obviously, you need to have a good defense to keep you in games and be able to force turnovers and create those big negative plays are crucial to winning. But if you're putting out there a terrible offense and just hoping your defense stops the other team, you're already behind the eight ball. Belichick obviously made his bones as a defensive coach. He's one of the best defensive coaches in history. And again, I'm not ready to say Belichick's not a good coach or any of that nonsense. Like maybe, there is this unceremonious breakup between the Patriots and Belichick, and we just really do remember the Tom Brady years, and those were as great as they possibly been. But the entire team needs a philosophy change. The entire offense needs a complete rehaul, from the starting offensive line to the quarterback to the skill position players. And maybe Belichick at this point in his career doesn't even want to deal with any of that nonsense anymore. He's obviously done what anybody would dream to do as a coach in the National Football League. So Patriots, at this point, I think it probably just is better for them to hit the reset button and start over.
Yeah, we'll have to have people in the comments hop below and let us know. If you are a Patriots fan, number one, do you need a hug? Do you need a cuddle? Things will get better. Number two, whether you're a Pats fan or not, hop below in the comments and let us know, what do you think about this situation? And what do you think the best course of action is? You let it ride out? Do you make something happen in season? We want to hear what you think. Hop below in the comments and let us know.
And the best part about this, all for Patriots fans, is you happen to suck in one of the best draft classes you could potentially suck in for quarterback talent. Could actually be a blessing in disguise, all things considered. The NFL, there's so much turnover year over year. You have some decent players in that defense. You now maybe get a top 3 quarterback in this draft. Anything can happen. But like Newbie said, pound that like button. Let us know in the comments what you think the Bill Belichick and the Patriots should do, if they should break up or if we still have faith in Bill. Also, a reminder, check out GoldSheet.com for a newsletter. Almost every single college football game broken down with stats, information, analysis. Every NFL game broken down with picks that have been killing it on the Gold Sheet, as well as WagerTalk.com, Gold Sheet handicapper profile. The team has a LTS pick service there with more picks to add to the NFL card as the week continues and more information gets going. We'll be discussing Thursday Night Football in just a second, but let's talk Pittsburgh Steelers, Newbie. They should not have won that football game. I don't know what Mike Tomlin does, if he has a secret recipe of like a drink he gives out to the team. They drink the Kool-Aid and now all of a sudden everybody's laser focused. I don't know if they had the personnel staff putting butter on the Ravens team's gloves so they couldn't catch the football. That game was not close. The Pittsburgh Steelers put up that 41-yard touchdown to win it, and that was basically, I think, almost like a third of their entire offensive output the entire day. Yet they're somehow in first place in the AFC North, and I guess you can say the sky is the limit for this team if they can do this. Newbie, what do you attribute this to? Like, how is this happening? How do they win this football game? And what do you think for the rest of the season?
Well, also a team that has struggled with having solid wide receiver play. You really went out and thought that Nelson Agholor was going to be what helped you out there. As a Philadelphia Eagles fan who helped run the guy out of town, probably not the best of ideas. So you are now reaping what you sow, going out and getting Odell Beckham Jr. and Nelson Agholor. So I'm not going to cry. Yeah, $15 million. Yeah, I'm not going to cry any tears for when teams get the dropsies, because when my Philadelphia Eagles couldn't catch a cold, everyone was telling me it was Carson Wentz's fault. I don't think Carson Wentz is any good, but that's neither here nor there. As far as this Steelers team goes, man, I'm with you. And it's funny because what we talked about with the Patriots team is like, you can't rely on defense to win you games in the NFL, but that's exactly what this Steelers team is doing, relying on their defense to win them games. And somehow they had 3 wins with one of the worst offenses I think we've ever seen trot out there week after week. I mean, horrible. And you can look at the metrics. You can look at, the expected plays that Kenny Pickett has. They expect him to suck. All metrics say that. And he's living up to that billing. But when they need to play, what does he do? He finds George Pickens on a huge bomb, and he somehow finds a way to score. But here's the thing now, when I look at this Steelers team, is they're 3-2. They're now going into the bye week. Any Steelers fan would have said, you're giving me 3-2 after the season start that we have, and we're going into the bye week with a winning record atop our division. Anyone would take that. The thing is, they're already 2-0 in their division with wins over the Ravens, with wins over the Browns. Now I just look at this schedule, Eric, and outside of their division. So they still have 2 games against the Bengals, who the Bengals are looking like they're surging a little bit. They still have to play the Ravens again. They still have to play the Browns again. But outside of that, Rams, Jags, Titans, Packers, Cardinals, Patriots, Colts, Seahawks. With how this defense is playing, there could be 5 to 6 wins right there. I think maybe you're talking about that being the potential floor is 5 wins throughout that stretch. And we already know Mike Tomlin, like you said, does he have the Michael Jordan secret stuff from Space Jam or not? The guy doesn't go under 500. It doesn't matter if he has Duck Hodges playing quarterback. He doesn't go under 500. So while it is wild, while it flies in the face of everything we know about the NFL with how this offense is playing, we knew coming into this year that this was going to be a solid defense. Did we know that they would be able to win them games and score points the way that they are? I don't think so, but 3-2 with a pretty soft schedule with a lot of rock fights still on that schedule. Don't look now, but you might be talking about the Steelers come playoff time. And I think any team that would see them in the playoffs would love to see them in the playoffs. I'm not saying it's going to be a Super Bowl run for this team, but Steelers 5 weeks in, heading into the bye week, EP, they're live. And I can't believe we're talking about that with what we've seen.
This is something that we even talked about during the preseason previews. We did the AFC North show. I'm not sure if actually you were like who I did it with, but when I did the AFC North show, it was just a conversation of how you just can't rule out the Pittsburgh Steelers no matter what. Ever. And another thing to put on the agenda for them, hopefully, is they're on the bye, and then Deontay Johnson should be ideally coming back for them week 7, and he is the biggest piece to that puzzle for them. That obviously Pat Freiermuth is a big thing over the middle for them, but the drop off from with Deontay Johnson and without is crazy. And we've literally seen one of the worst offenses in football somehow win football games because they're getting these defensive turnovers that are not, these defensive scores are not sustainable. But like you just mentioned, the people they're playing, when you're playing these kind of bad teams coming up or these middle of the pack teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolutely not be out of any of these games. I'm sure they're going to lose one of these games by 30, but then whatever game they're in the next week, they're going to be a 7-point dog against somebody, and they're going to win that game outright. So anytime that you're just seeing the Steelers getting the points, not laying the points, I'm definitely not in a position where I want to lay points with this team at any time. But if they're getting points at any point against any of those teams you mentioned, which they will be, and hopefully, again, they do get blown out one of those games, so then you can get even more points the next time. But yeah, the Stitcher Steelers aren't going anywhere. And you have the Browns now with a huge matchup this weekend against the Niners. You have the Ravens, which are big matchup in London against the Titans. And then you have the Bengals who need to just win like now because they dug themselves in a little bit hole. Burrow finally last week not on the injury report for a single day, which is why I wasn't shocked to see the Bengals have that, game where they turned up finally, because this is the closest Burrow has been to 100% healthy. You saw it on the injury report. You saw it in the game. But, man, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are hosting a playoff game, that's just going to be the ugliest game. But, you just got to give the credit where it's due. It doesn't matter. That's what we're talking about in football. The Ravens should have won that game 23-4 or 23-3, excuse me. What happens? They lose outright.
Yep. They get the wide receivers get a case of the dropsies, and the Steelers somehow, some way had their offense score points when they needed to. And that's been the MO of the season, is when push has come to shove, whether they need 3 or whether they need 6, some way, somehow, defying every logical thing in your body, the Steelers find a way to get it done. I'm just shocked that we're talking at 3-2. And then when I pulled up that schedule, wow. I mean, wow. The Pittsburgh Steelers, man, they somehow do it every year, man. Tomlin, absolute Hall of Famer, I'm thinking.
And we know when it comes to divisions, everything is kind of thrown out the window a little bit. AFC North, obviously the most, but they beat a very good Cleveland Browns team and then a very good Baltimore Ravens team. And these are two teams
Yeah.
that both you and I love to do things
Yeah.
deep in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yes, both of those teams probably should have won those games, but who got the dub? And that's the difference maker in the NFL. With that, what a small sample size and what a vacuum every single year is. Shoulda, woulda, coulda does nothing for you in the NFL. Who won the game? Steelers won 3 of them.
The team that averages 1.4 red zone trips per game, not per quarter, not per half, per football game, is 3-2.
Analytics guys are in shambles over the Steelers, man.
Yeah, before we get into Thursday Night Football, got a little bit to break down there. I want to discuss the Indianapolis Colts quickly because this is a team that I was intrigued by in the preseason. Just as we know with the National Football League, rookie coaches, there is always going to be at least 1, 2, or 3 teams that just completely outperform expectations. Right now, that team, one of the teams that fits that bill is the Indianapolis Colts. They just won as slight home underdogs to the Titans. But I am just so impressed with Shane Steichen. Obviously, I'm impressed with Anthony Richardson. He's now going to be out for a little bit. They have to figure out how to get him to stop taking some big hits because obviously that's what's going to be the end-all, be-all for not just him, but any rushing quarterback. Like it's not sustainable. Even like Sam Howell, like you got to stop taking hits or your NFL career is going to end before it really takes off. Not to be morbid, just the name of the game. But I think that this is a very unique situation for the Colts, and I think the market is pricing this game against the Jaguars very interestingly this weekend. So I ended up being off Buffalo, and you backed Jacksonville because of the travel situation. Jaguars had 2 weeks to hang out in London. The Bills did not fly to London until Friday, and then you could see all in the first quarter. The Buffalo Bills looked like they haven't even got off the plane yet. This is a game that's going to be hard to quantify, but it's going to be huge for the standings moving forward. Obviously, these two teams already played this season. The Colts lost that game, did not cover the spread, but that was a game where it was a lot closer than the box score indicated. And now you have an unprecedented situation of the Jaguars coming home from London after a 2-week stay. Now, this could mean absolutely nothing to the spread. This could also be a similar situation where because they were there for 2 weeks, it makes the adjustment period more difficult. They haven't seen their families in 14 days. Maybe they're, spending time with the kids as they should be instead of missing that extra film session, like whatever it may be. I think that that's something to monitor. And now with Minshew missing, the line is sitting at, I saw it at 4.5 earlier. I've never got higher than 5 unless I missed that move. But I think it's kind of pricing that in right now. But I still think the Colts are live this weekend, not just to win outright against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but just simply live as a AFC South winning team this season. They have that win over the Titans. They win this game. They'll have that split series right now with the Jaguars. Of course, them and Houston always get into some crazy things when they go at it. But you have a head coach that has his team believing. You have a defense that, plays decently despite missing, not having a great overall team. They do play well on the offensive and defensive line, and Steichen just clearly has something going for them, and it's no secret. It's been since he was in Los Angeles with Herbert. He's done it with the Eagles, who now see their offense struggling without Steichen. And now we see this Colts team that this is the same cast of characters from last year that put on this embarrassing display of football. It's not like they have a completely revamped team. Of course, Richardson and Minshew are different, but most of the pieces there are brought back players. It's not like they completely revamped this roster. So just long-winded way of saying kudos to Shane Steichen. Now would be a great time to rebuy into Coach of the Year because if they beat those Jaguars, that ticket will be live as hell. And all things Colts win total, AFC South playoff appearance are all on the table, and you would get a better price betting it now than waiting until after this Jacksonville result.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, if you remember back, you mentioned those preseason videos that we did, and that's why we tell you to be subscribed here so you never miss any of our shows. This was something that you gave people a nice price on, saying that the Colts are going to be live in this division, and it's truer than ever right now. And as far as just looking at this game this week, it may be one that ends up on my card come Thursday, simply because It may be a nothing. It's the same thing that we said about the Bills travel spot. It may be a nothing, but it definitely can't be a positive for Jacksonville returning home after 2 weeks in London and 2 big wins. You know what I mean? They get the upset outright win over the team of the year that everyone was lauding. But after that win against the Dolphins, and they also took care of business against an Atlanta team that maybe isn't as bad as we thought they were. I mean, Ritter looked pretty damn serviceable this last weekend in their win against the Texans. So maybe that win on the road looks a little bit better than we maybe had thought previously. But I'm with you, man. And if you look at the schedule for the rest of the Colts too, it's similar to what we were talking about the Steelers. It's not many world beaters that you're looking at on there. And whether it's Richardson or whether it's Minshew, they've already showed, hey, if we go with Minshew, we can go on the road and beat the Ravens outright in an overtime game. So I don't think you're getting much of a drop off. But I will say, Richardson's played in 4 games in his NFL career, and he's got hurt in 3 of them. This guy needs to figure it out because it is not sustainable. You're not playing against, subpar college football tackling teams. You're playing against the best of the best in the NFL, and with a talent that looks so bright, I hope he can figure it out because I would like to see years to come of Anthony Richardson. And with the way that he's playing right now, he's going to have an RG3 style of season where it was the guy who was promised to us that we never really got to see. I would hate to see him out of the league after a few years because I think he could be a pretty special player. So hopefully they're able to figure out that side of things.
He looks like an absolute animal. The play where he got hit, I mean, it was a pretty traditional tackle where he just kind of got the body weight on him right to the shoulder. Not going to claim to be a doctor or anything and breaking that injury down. But like you mentioned, he's been in the league for 5 games. He's played in only 4 of them, and he's gotten hurt in 3 of the 4 that he's actually played in. Not the way to go about it. But let's talk some Thursday night football, newbie. So we'll discuss this ad nauseum on our show. We're actually recording Friday for our week 5 break. Our week 6 best bet show will be coming out on Friday this week, not Thursday. You guys can blame newbie for that one. But the theme for this weekend seems like it's going to be weather. Apparently, going to wind from basically Chicago, Cleveland area all the way through to the East Coast. Obviously, that is something that changes them. You can track the radars and see where it's coming from. Even with radars, it's Mother Nature. You can't quantify Mother Nature. She'll do whatever she pleases. Thursday Night Football. So looking at the WagerTalk Live odds screen now, this number for the total was open at 50. Is all the way making its way down to 47.5. Actually went to 47. It's gotten bet back up to 48. And that's just something to monitor now because that's the first game. There's supposed to be wind in Kansas City. And then the wind is going to, continue throughout the weekend on the East Coast. Again, get to that next time. Newbie, Chiefs 10.5 point favorites. And what they've done against the Broncos since Patrick Mahomes has been a Kansas City Chief is just downright embarrassing for Broncos fans when you just think you can't get embarrassed enough. Now they have to go play the Kansas City Chiefs, embarrass them more than any team so far in the league. With this consideration of the total being bet down, potential high wins, and obviously the terrible Broncos defense, a little bit of a broken Chiefs offense, and the Chiefs' inability to cover by margin just really since the Mahomes era, they're just almost always overvalued. How are you viewing this game? Because my first thought is to just take the Broncos plus the 10.5 and hold my nose the whole way through.
I'm kind of with you there. I think if I would be betting this game as far as the side goes, I'd take that 10.5. No Travis Kelce in practice. So that's definitely something to monitor as well for an offense that really hasn't even been all that great with Travis Kelce in it. And you mentioned the domination. Broncos haven't beat this team since 2015. Since 2015, 15 straight losses. Now, the last 3 times they've faced off, Denver has covered. So I think if that narrowed out enough that the Chiefs just absolutely own the Broncos, maybe people sweep in and just lay that 10.5 because Broncos just lost to the Jets. Maybe we get this even higher. I doubt that it moves much away from 10.5. So I'm with you. I would lean that way, but I think you just take the side out of it. You take the total out of it, and you just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Every running back who plays against this Denver Broncos team eats. Even the backup running backs eat when they play against this Denver defense. I mean, how bad is the Denver's defense? It's the worst ever recorded in DVOA. It's through 5 games. This is quite literally the worst defense. And honestly, the offense isn't terrible. Outside of that fumble that Russell Wilson gives up. I mean, they've been scoring points Russell Wilson's been putting up yards in bunches. So it's really been the defense that has cost them. So I'm not going to get cute. I know it's square, but honestly, getting in front of 75.5, where it probably moves to, I'll take my Pacheco props. I'll take him over rushing, probably get him on an anytime touchdown score. And if we do think this game could be a blowout, I don't think either of you or either of us really see it going that way. But maybe you look towards taking some McKinnon props. 9.5 rush yards. It's ugly. It's stinky. He hasn't gone over this number all year. But if he is going to go over it, it's going to be against the Denver Broncos. So I might work in some McKinnon props as well. But give me Pacheco over 72.5. And I'll sprinkle a little something on McKinnon over the 9.5. Maybe take his rushing receiving, since he's kind of used as more of a receiving back. That's 24.5. But for me, it's take your pick on running back props. However you want to attack it, they're probably going to get home in this one.
Yeah, could no number is out yet, but could certainly even look at Mahomes' prop for himself on running. But of course, you have to factor in Neil Downs as a 10.5-point favorite. You'd certainly expect Kansas City to be in a position where they are taking knees to end the game. But going back to what you mentioned about the dominance the Chiefs have had over them from a straight-up perspective, they are 10-0 in their last 10 meetings against Broncos, but just 5-5 against the spread in those meetings. And what we've seen from the Chiefs when they couldn't beat, obviously there was a little bit of controversy in that Jets game with, it shouldn't be controversy, Mahomes made the right play, but they should have covered that spread and had that game end 10 when it ended 3. But all things considered, though, the Kansas are really struggling to win by margin with Patrick Mahomes. These spots it's just natural that they're overvalued. You have a top 4 team in football, with the best quarterback in football and potentially on his way to history. And that's a debate I'll have with anybody else at a different time. It's just impossible to not be slightly overvalued. The weather, if this is a run first game, is making me kind of lean again toward Broncos %1.5. It's something that I'll tweet out for everybody if I do end up backing them. But my first thought is that because of the total being bet down in that situation when there's less points expected to be scored, the value within getting points is much higher. And again, you're already starting with a 10.5-point cushion, covering key numbers of 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, obviously. And like you said, the Broncos offense is not broken. Russell Wilson has actually played relatively well. As terrible for and looking as they are, it's not fully on Russell Wilson and co. And then on the flip side, that defense is terrible, but you have the short week with the Chiefs offense that has not been humming. Travis Kelce, who was banged up, that I'm sure the Chiefs would rather Kelce take it easy and focus on a game down the line than having to hurt himself over playing the Denver Broncos. And of course, Mahomes is always going to be the great equalizer. This Chiefs defense is playing great right now, but I'm already leaning heavily toward taking the Broncos to just cover the 10.5, stay relatively close in this game. And I think this back door wide open because they are really beating them up really badly. They're not going to be trotting out Pacheco and Kelce to go get hurt late in the game, week 6 against the Broncos when you're already sitting 4-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a fair point too. Is how much do you view this as a big juncture? You probably roll out the B team and still be able to put up some points here against this Denver Broncos defense. So maybe with that kind of injury news, you do grab the McKinnon numbers now before there is some announcements and some changes in the roster that shoots them up and they go a little bit higher. So yeah, maybe the McKinnon is the better way to look at it as you're heading into Thursday night football.
And last point I'll make on this game is also the Denver defense obviously did not look good against the Jets whatsoever.
No.
And again, they're playing a terrible team, worst quarterback in football. But on the other hand of the spectrum, though, they did get Justin Simmons back. They did get Josie Jewell back. Those are 2 of the better defensive players. If there is any consolation or any hope for the Broncos, is that they're able to, shake off that maybe rust from that game against the Jets. And now those 2 of their best, if not their 2 best, Justin Simmons definitely their best defensive player, now being healthy, it certainly can't hurt at this point.
Sorry, you broke up there a second.
Just said it certainly can't hurt, obviously, having your 2 of your 3 best defensive players back. It's only can be a good for the Denver Broncos. But that is going to do it for us today on the show. We will see you again on Friday this week. Just a big reminder to like the video and shoot us a comment. Let us know what you think about Bill Belichick. Let us know if you think that Colts can usurp the Jaguars as AFC South champs. Let us know if you think Pittsburgh are still frauds or if they Mike Tomlin he's got the sauce down and he can do whatever he likes. And let us know what you think about this Thursday night game. But for myself and Newbie, you can find us on Twitter, myself at Slime Action, Dan Alexander on Twitter at Newbie Talks. Thank you guys for all the support, and we'll see you guys.